GNA, this is the wildest wide in San Jose. So who's ready?
Ready.
Yeah. At this time, I'm going to bring back up the president and founder of the GNA, Elias, Melas.
Yes.
Okay, Mike's back on. Okay, so it's time now for our featured speaker, and we have a tradition here at the GNA where we make our speaker go all the way to the back and make that grand entrance. So Dan Tovar, stand up and head all the way to the back by the exit sign. Okay, so I'm going to mention the other group again because that's where I met Dan Tovar originally. I met Dan Tovar back in March at the Antifa Successful Bakers event. And it was really interesting how I met him. You know, we ran the meeting. After the meeting, I was getting ready to leave, to head back. We had our Interactive Fridays event. That event was on a Friday, if I remember correctly, right? And as I was walking out, he had stopped me. He said, hi. He said, oh, I've seen you all over Facebook. You know, I want to get to know you. And we were standing up, having an informal one-on-one for almost an hour by the front door of the Main Street Cafe. Remember that, Dan? And really got to know this gentleman. He told me a lot about what he does. I said, you know what? In the future, when we reunite, something comes up, we're going to have you come to the Bay Area and speak. And Dan is here today. So I don't butcher this. Let me read my notes. Dan has a company called Spirit of America, and he's here to talk to us about the Pledge of Allegiance, and he will explain what each word means, and he will also discuss our founding fathers. So on that note, I'd like you all to once again rise to your feet, and give a big warm GNA welcome to Dan Tovar! Thank you so much for being here.
Cheers, man.
Thank you for those kind words. I'm Dan Tovar, and I'm going to be talking to you about this great country. My presentation is entitled The Pledge of Allegiance. I'll be talking to you about our founding fathers a little bit, about this great flag here, and then I'll recite the pledge and explain the meaning, and then end it with a story about hope. But before I do that, let me tell you a little bit about what drives Dan Tovar. I was born here in California, raised here in San Bernardino. In fact, I'm one of 11 children born to Maria and Jose Tovar. My parents were not educated. My mom was a stay-at-home mom, raising 11 kids. My father worked 2 jobs to support his family because he believed in this country. He instilled into his sons and daughters certain values that have been with me throughout my life and that helped me be successful. My real name is not Dan. Growing up in the 50s in San Bruno, when we moved into our new house, all the little kids in the neighborhood came knocking on our door and asked my mother if I could come out and play with them. She said yes. Back in the 50s, for those who've been around the block for a while, the style of dress for little kids who were 6 and 7 years old was Levi pants, rolled up, T-shirts with stripes on them. I came out and they go to me, hi, what's your name? I go to them, my name is Rogelio. And Rogelio is Spanish and it means Roger. These kids, there's about 9 or 10 of them, they looked at me and I knew what was going through their minds. How in the heck did you say that name? They did the best they could. And it came out like this. Rodil? The hell? They couldn't do it. Out of frustration, the group of kids, which we became best friends, and we started our version of our gang in the neighborhood, they go, your name from now on, and we're going to call you Dan. True story. That's the name, that's my nickname, it stuck. So, you guys can call me Dan. You can call me Roger. I don't mind. Or for those of you who can pronounce Rogelio, go for it. You know, my parents believed in the American dream. And through hard work, you could do everything. They loved this country. They told us to respect, have faith. And like my father used to tell me, son, do not let anyone tell you what you can't do. As a result of these values that my parents instilled into me and my brothers and sisters, I was the first in the family to finish school, go on to college, go into the military, get my commission, and become a military pilot. I remember when I was accepted into flight school. Flight school back then was a year long. The last week of flight school, I sent away from my parents. My parents had never been, till that time, east of Reno, Nevada. But then they were two humble parents getting on an airplane at a San Francisco International Airport and flying to Fort Rucker, Alabama, where we rendezvoused. The military had a lot of things for our loved ones to do. After I introduced my mother and father to my friends and their parents, they all got on buses and they got to see what their sons have been doing for the last year. They saw the training that we went through, visit with the instructor pilots, the aircraft, and like any parents, they were really proud of their son. But something was bothering my mother. I could tell. The night before graduation, I asked my mother, Mom, what's wrong? What's wrong? She wouldn't tell me. Finally, I cried it out of her. She told me that maybe, son, I should not be here. I feel out of place. After meeting your friend's parents, all of them are doctors and lawyers and businessmen and women. Honey, I'm just a stay-at-home mom. I reminded what my mother told me and my father. If it wasn't for you two, I would not be here. I am not ashamed of you, never would be. Honor thy father and thy mother. The next day, during the graduation ceremonies, I was standing at attention with my fellow aviators, waiting for our names to be called out, so we could march straight up to that stage and have our wings put on our chest by the commanding general. My parents were seated to my right. When I finally heard my name called out, instead of me marching directly towards that stage, I went to my right. I grabbed my mother by the hand and my father and took them with me to that stage. I had my mother pin the wings on my chest and my father put the bar on my shoulder. This is the first time that I've seen my parents cry. I am proud of my mom and my dad. My dad has passed away, but my mom lives with me. I take care of her because of the core values that she instilled into me. Matter of fact, if you visit my website, you'll see a picture of my mother and me, her pinning the wings on my chest. You know, I'm very proud of the successes that I have throughout my life. Working in corporate America in senior management as a successful businessman, but the one success that stands out above them all was given the honor to serve this great country for 20 years, leading a bunch of terrific men and women. The names and faces I will never forget, especially the men and women who have fought. Growing up in the 50s as a child, this great country only had 48 states. We added our 49th state, Alaska, on January 3rd of 1959, followed that same year by our 50th state, Hawaii. We also added 2 words to the Pledge of Allegiance, under God. This would be the 4th time that the Pledge of Allegiance would be modified from its original version. Prior March of 1954, no attempt to get the pledge officially amended by adding these two words had succeeded. The final push came from Dr. Reverend George McPherson. You know, some of our presidents would honor Lincoln's birthday by sitting in the pew that Lincoln sat at the church that he went to. That day, in 1954, President Dwight D. Eisenhower sat there. The Dr. Reverend George McPherson delivered a sermon based on a Gettysburg Address entitled A New Birth of Freedom. He argued that this nation's might lay not in arms, but in its spirit and high purpose. He noted that the pledge sentiments could be that of any nation. However, there was something missing in ours. And that which was missing was a characteristic and a definitive factor in the American way of life. He cited Lincoln's words, under God, as defining words that set the United States of America apart from other nations. You know, back in '54, there was concern, even back then. What if someone thought that under God was a prayer? The Pledge of Allegiance could not be recited. I'd like to share two court decisions on this very subject. I'm going to read it to you verbatim because it's important that you hear what these two courts said about this. On March 11th, 2010, the United States Court of Appeals for the Ninth Circuit upheld the words under God in the Pledge of Allegiance in the case Newdell versus Rio Linda School District. The 2-to-1 decision, the appellate court ruled words were of a, quote, ceremonial and patriotic nature, unquote, and did not constitute an establishment of religion. That same year, on November 12th, in a unanimous decision, the United States Court of Appeals for the First Circuit in Boston affirmed the ruling by New Hampshire lower federal court, which found that the pledge reference to God does not violate students' rights. You know, our founding fathers' vision of America was right on target. They set the standard of what true leadership really is. That standard has 3 great leadership traits. These men were morally and ethically sound and men of faith. When we live by that standard, there is nothing as Americans we cannot do. Unfortunately, we have drifted away from the vision that our founding fathers have put into place over the decades. When we do not live by these values, we see the consequences in broken families, in corporate America, in cheating and lying to one another, and unfortunately, with our elected officials with the finger pointing going on. There are people that would say that America's greatness is on the decline, that America's prestige and standing on the world stage has deteriorated. To those who would echo and say such words, I say to you, move out of my way. These people do not practice true leadership. Maybe because they're not morally and ethically sound, and have little or no faith. They certainly do not share the vision that our founding fathers put into place. When America needs us, you, we stand ready to serve. You accept responsibility for your choices and actions. Because when you do that, it says a lot about your character. And what is character? Character is made up of what I call 6 great American pillars. Pillar 1, trustworthiness, being honest. Don't cheat, steal, or deceive. Pillar 2, respect. Always treat others with respect. Pillar 3, responsibility. Do what you're supposed to do. Pillar 4, always play by the rules. Pillar 5, caring. Be kind, be compassionate. Show that you really care. And Pillar 6, citizenship. Get involved in your schools and community and make it a better place. So who are these Americans who answer her calling? They're men and women like you. And where do we come from? You come from your cities, your towns, your farms, the valleys, the mountains, the plains, from sea to shining sea. Because you are the beacon of true leadership. When you get involved, you always right the ship. You are all the Americans that cry out of many, one. Let's look at this great flag, our standard of glory. You know, Betsy Ross would often tell her children, her relatives and friends, of the fateful day when 3 men from a single committee from the Continental Congress came calling on her. This meeting occurred at her home in late May of 1776. These representatives included George Washington, Robert Morris, and George Ross. Betsy already knew George Washington because they both worshiped Christ Church in Philadelphia. General Washington showed Betsy a rough design of our flag, designed by Francis Hopkinton, the congressman from New Jersey, fellow patriot. The design had 13 stripes, alternate red and white. The unit had 13 stars in a circle, white on blue, representing the new constellation. Betsy, a standout with scissors, demonstrated to this committee she could cut a 5-pointed star in a single snip. Impressed, this committee entrusted Betsy with making our first flag. She finished the flag in late May, early June 1776. Up until that time, the colonies and militia used many different flags. Some are famous, such as the rattlesnake flag, used by the Continental Navy with its venomous challenge, "Don't threat on me." Our current flag was designed by 17-year-old Robert Heck in 1958 as a school project when Alaska and Hawaii were being discussed as possible states. Robert received a B- from his teacher because his teacher said to him it lacked creativity. Not satisfied with this grade, and after discussing it with his teacher, she agreed that he would get a higher grade if the design was adopted by Congress. So what's he do? He sent it to his representatives, where it became our current national flag. His teacher changed his grade from a B- to an A. Let's look at this great flag. Let's start with that eagle that sits on top. On June 20th of 1782, that American bald eagle was chosen as the emblem of the United States of America because of its great strength, long life, and majestic looks. That eagle also represents freedom. At one of the early battles of the War of Independence, the struggle on the battlefield awoke that eagle from its heights. It circled above the men on the battlefield. A patriot looked up and saw the eagle circling and shrieking and yelled out to his men, "Men, men, listen!" The eagle shrieks and cries out for freedom and rallied his men to win the day. The blue stands for vigilance, perseverance, justice, truth, and loyalty. The stars, the 50 stars, represent each one of the great 50 states. The red stands for hardiness, valor, strength, and bravery. The white for peace and honesty. The gold trim represents nothing. It was added as an enhancement to our great flag. The Pledge of Allegiance, written by Francis Bellamy. I'm going to recite the pledge to you and explain the meaning of these words. I,
Excuse me, Dad. Is it possible to use the mic?
yeah. I, me, an individual, many, a one, pledge, dedicate all my worthy goods to give without self-pity. Allegiance, my love, and my devotion. To the flag, our standard, old glory. A symbol of freedom wherever she waves. There's respect because you have given it. United, that means we will come together. States, individual communities, they have united into 58 states. 50 individual communities with pride, dignity, and purpose. All divided by imaginary boundaries, yet united to a common purpose, and that's love for country. And to the republic, a state with sovereign power is invested in representatives, chosen by the people to govern. The government is the people, and it's from the people to the leaders, not from the leaders to the people. For which it stands, one nation under God, meaning so blessed with God. Indivisible, incapable of being divided. Liberty, which is freedom. The right of power to live one's own life without threat, fear, or some sort of retaliation. And justice, the principle of equality and doing fairly with others. For all, meaning, ladies and gentlemen, just as much your country as it is mine. I need to share with you a story about hope that brings some of this all together. There's this young single mother who has a little boy who is 5 years old. And that little boy would tell his mother, "Mommy, when I grow up, I'm going to be a fireman. Mommy, when I grow up, I'm going to take care of you. Mommy, I love you." That young mother would get down on her knees, put her arms around her son, and say to him, "Honey, I love you too." The next day, a little boy woke up ill. The mother kept him home from school. After the second day, he was still ill, and she took him to see the doctor. The doctor examines her little boy and then conducts a number of tests and tells that young mother to take him home and make sure he gets plenty of rest. A few days later, she gets a call from the doctor's office. The doctor needs to talk to her and go over the results of that test. She arrives at the doctor's office and taken into his office where she is seated. Moments later, the doctor walks in with the results of the test. The news is not good. Matter of fact, the news is devastating. That young mother starts to cry and cry and cry and tells the doctor, "Are you sure?" And he says to her, "Yes, I am sure." And begins to cry and cry and cry. That doctor tries to do everything that he can within his power to comfort that young man. She leaves his office, she gets in her car, sits behind the steering wheel, and begins to cry and cry and cry. Then she remembers what her son told her. "Mommy, when I grow up, I'm going to be a fireman. Mommy, when I grow up, I'm going to take care of you. Mommy, I love you." And with that, it brings a smile to her. She drives away. On the way home, she sees the firehouse and decides to stop in. As she walks in, she is greeted by her fireman who says to her, "Hi, can I help you?" She says, "Is the fire chief here?" The fireman says, "Yes, I'd like to speak to him." The fireman leads her to the fire chief's office. She walks in, the fire chief looks at her, knows something is terribly wrong, and has her seated. That young mother tells the fire chief about her son. The chief listens to what the mother says and brings a tear to his eye. And then, this true leader says to her, listen, tomorrow's Saturday. Can you have your son ready at 8 in the morning? The young mother turns to the chief and says, why? Because if it's okay with you, I'm going to bring your son here to the firehouse. The young mother looks at the chief and says, really? She says, yes, really. And begins to cry and hugs the chief and says, I'm sorry, but I'm crying. The chief tells her, it's okay, you cry all you want. Because ladies and gentlemen, this man has a heart of gold, a true leader. The next day, at a few minutes before 8, there she is, standing on the porch with her son. From afar, you can hear the sound of the red fire truck approaching their house. The little boy looks over and sees the red truck as it comes to a stop in front of the house. The chief gets out and it is followed by the men and women of Ladder 7. The chief walks up to the little boy. He gets down on his knees and tells that young little boy, son, do you know who I am? That little boy goes, yes, you're the fire chief. Son, do you know why I'm here? No. There's no fire. No, son, there's not. I am here because today is the first day for you to begin your training as a fireman. The little boy goes, really? Yes, son, really. As he looks up to his mother and says to his mother, Mommy, I told you I was going to be a fireman. And his mommy says, yes, son, you did. The chief tells the little boy, son, tell your mother goodbye. She'll see you at the end of the day. The little boy is taken and put in the fire truck and strapped in. The little boy has $1 million smile from cheek to cheek, wide, eyes wide open, as he waves goodbye to his mother who was standing on the sidewalk. That day, that little boy did everything a fireman would do. He trained with the firemen. He cleaned up around the firehouse, helped prepare meals, and sat down with a new friend at Ladder 7. At the end of the day, he was taken home. There on the sidewalk, as a fire truck approached, was his mother. And what does his mother see? Her young son dressed as a fireman with $1 million smile. He gets out and they both say goodbye to all the new friends. The next day, that little boy woke up extremely ill. The mother took this little boy to the hospital where he was admitted. As she sat down next to her son's bed, holding his little hand, again, she did what she needed to do for her son. She called that chief and told the chief that her son was in the hospital. Again, this true leader responded by telling her, listen, tell the staff of the hospital, when they hear the fire truck and siren approaching, not to be scared, because the men and women of Ladder 7 are coming to be one of them. She does as she's instructed, turns back to her son's room, sits next to her son's hospital. The little boy's eyes open up. Again, there's that $1 million smile. Moments later, all the men and women of Ladder 7 are in that room. The mother on one side holding his little hand, the chief on the other side holding the other hand, and all the firemen surrounding him. The little boy turns to the chief and tells him, Chief, I'm sorry. I couldn't come to work today. I'm sick. The chief looks at him and says, son, I know. That's why we're here, to see that one of our own returns back to our ranks. And with that, he turns to his mother and says to her, Mommy, I love you, and closes his eyes for the last time. I share the story with you because it's about hope. That's what hope is all about. You see, ladies and gentlemen, that young mother planted her tent on the grounds of hope, faith, or anything is possible when you have true leadership. You are America's leaders. You practice true leadership. There is nothing we can't do when we are true leaders. Nothing. Don't let anybody tell you that this country's greatness is behind us. But guess what? It's not. Because it's all about leadership. Not leadership, but true leadership. Ladies and gentlemen, I'm Dan Tovar, humble American patriot. Thank you.
You guys like that? Yes. That was good stuff, wasn't it? How many learned something today? How many going to take this with you and apply it? That's what it's all about here at GNA, helping you out. At this time, I want Fritz to come on.